die Mikrofone. Okay, hello to all of you. Hello, welcome, welcome, dear delegates, welcome, dear Mr. Chancellor. It's a great honor that you're with us here today at the Y7 Youth Summit here in Berlin, and that you're taking the time to meeting all the young delegates present here who are super excited of presenting the Y7 Communiqué 2022 to you and give you the recommendations for the G7 Summit in Elmau.
Yes, I will introduce you now to the different tracks we've been working on. In alignment with the first key priority of the G7 presidential program, A Sustainable Planet, we created the track Sustainable and Green Planet. And the key proposal of our first track builds on the idea of the Climate Club. And as you, Mr. Chancellor, highlighted yourself, we don't want this club to be an exclusive one, but rather an inclusive one that involves different stakeholders and especially young people into its decision-making processes and its implementation. And the track also highlights the repeated commitment of the entire G7 to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And to reach that goal, our track proposes carbon pricing that obliges high-income countries to carry the main financial burden, following the principle of shared obligation when addressing environmental destruction, while denying equal responsibility of all states regarding environmental protection.
Yeah, and as you can hear, we have like a variety of different tracks working, like young people committed to be working on the different aspects of the G7 presidential program. And track 2 is focusing in alignment with the economic stability and transformation aspects of your program for Elmau. And our youngsters here worked in a track that aims to transform our economy and creates shared progress. And there the key proposal is for a transition within the world of work, a just transition to new digital and environmental standards. So we would also like to urge the G7 during their summit to focus on the regulation of unpaid employment, employment opportunities, and banning unpaid internships for that are taking longer than 1 month, which is also in line with the advocacy work of other youth organizations.
Yes, and our third track is in alignment with the third key priority of the G7 presidential program, Stronger Together. And we are delegates working on the resilience of democracies. And in this track, we call upon G7 leaders to create civil society task forces that will allow for the implementation of concrete communication between the governed and the government, so that community participation is ensured on all levels of policy making. And leaders should ensure that such task forces are representing the reality of our societies by being diverse and inclusive in their representation.
And last but not least, we have a track on global health and solidarity, where we are having a committed group of young people focusing on mental health. Particularly, mental health is a strong topic this year. We would like to urge the G7 to focus on the issue of mental health, particularly for young people in terms of responding to different sets of crises, like the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously, but also climate change or other consequences that are affecting us, particularly as young people of our generation. And we would like to highlight that last year, this was not in the G7 presidential program, but the Y7 summit in the UK convinced Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister to take that onto the agenda and push for it, and he did. And we would also like to invite you to take the mental health topic on the agenda as well for the young people of this summit.
And now you might be surprised that our last final track did not work on topic committed to the G7 presidential program, but instead followed the shocking political developments of the recent weeks. And we know that the G7 leaders are discussing the invasion of Ukraine, and at this point we wanted to highlight the role of young people in peace-building processes, and hence created a new track on youth, peace and security. And this track does solely focus on Ukraine. It does not solely focus on Ukraine, but was created as a consequence of the war. And building on the existing United Nations Security Council resolutions on YPS, we ask G7 countries to lead by example by implementing the YPS agenda. And this includes strong partnerships with youth organizations and the commitment to concrete actions for the institutionalizations of the YPS agenda.
So now you've heard like the key elements of our communiqué, which we'd now like to hand over to you before then listening to your keynote, to your remarks on our communiqué. But before that, we would like to hand it over and then take a picture and use a photo opportunity with you.
Dankeschön.
So thank you for your work, for all the discussions you already had, and thank you for the presentation. We will have a more deeply discussion on all these topics later, but before this I would like to have a short speech on the topics that are important here. And this address will be in German, so you might take your translation instruments if necessary. Einen schönen guten Tag von meiner Seite aus. Ich freue mich, dass Sie alle so lange so intensiv.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for your work. It's an important contribution to the debates that we will have. We will see the gathering of strong economies around the globe. They don't come alone, but they discuss with parts of civil society, with all the young people that have gathered here to discuss the questions that are important, to bring proposals and to make sure that we will interlink the debates of the G7 to the debates that have to take place around the world. When I remember the G6 meetings, you were small back then, and it took place at a French castle. Not many people came. We had heads of state and government gathered by the fireplace, but now this has become bigger. We have many people gathered at these summits, and also we have contributions like yours, the ones you drafted and that are important indeed. When we look at the society and how it has changed, we know that it will be a world full of young people in Western Europe, in North America and other countries. This is not as visible yet, but when you look to Asia, to India, when you look look to the African continent, you will take note of the fact that there are many, many young people who are growing up right now. Incredible numbers, billions, who will shape the future of the globe. And this is why it is all the more important that we don't limit at the debates at the G7 to ourselves. I'm grateful for being invited to these talks here and to meet representatives from many countries that participate in the debate and represent these global regions. We actually copied you for the G7 in Elmau. We invited many other representatives from other nations aside from the international organizations, but we also invited Indonesia, Senegal, South Africa, and we're going to prepare this further because the world is, well, actually shaped by many, many around the globe. What is moving to us, we've heard it before, the terrible war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine moves us deeply. The terrible destruction taking place in this country that was innocently attacked. Villages, small cities, big cities are being destroyed. Roads, bridges, railroads, hospitals are being destroyed. Many things that have grown and have been established over the centuries and have been destroyed and will not be able to be used for a long time in the foreseeable future. If you think back to Germany and the last war 77 years back, we'll be reminded that bombs are found still up to this day, 77 years after the end of the war. This country that seems so orderly now, this war has a grasp on us still and plays a role in our day-to-day lives, and this will hold true for Ukraine as well. And this has to become our clear common statement. This war has to stop. We will have to have a ceasefire. Russia needs to withdraw its troops, and it will be needs to be possible that we end this destruction, but also we end the killings of many innocent citizens in Ukraine and the many dead soldiers that have to be registered. This war has to come to an end. And as I said, it will play a major part in the discussions that we are going to have. It's a question that deeply moves us when we gather there. And so it is important to know that this is also a question that moves you as well. We're going to organize international solidarity with Ukraine, provide financial support, humanitarian assistance, but also having the opportunity, providing Ukraine the opportunity to defend itself. We're going to continue our assistance. I think the solidarity is impressive when it comes to hosting Ukrainian refugees. Millions of people have left the country. Millions who've found refuge, in particular in Europe, in the countries of Eastern Europe. Poland lends a major contribution, but also Germany has hosted and accepted more than 700,000 displaced persons, refugees from Ukraine. Many young people, many children, oftentimes their mothers, the elderly, and people requiring special needs and protection. And we're seeing a special type of refugee movement here in our country. I was very much impressed by the great solidarity, the willingness to help. Many people in civil society want to help. And what impressed me also is the fact that just how much Ukraine has digitalized its education. Many school children and students can continue to be educated, and we would like to see that in Germany as well. So this could also serve as an inspiration for us. We will do everything in our power to provide protection to those who seek protection and to give the young people and young children with education so that they continue their their education, go to daycare, go to school at universities as well. And other than that, we have many questions that are important to us. You mentioned mental health. It's an important contribution, and it's a remarkable commitment that you're sharing here. We're also talking about employment for young people, and indeed, it has to be a pivotal topic that needs to be addressed around the globe. How can we provide good qualifications, good education, to give prospects for employment to young people? How can we make sure that those who have employment are treated fairly? So questions pertaining to labor laws, social rights, employees need to play a pivotal role. And for us, it is a pivotal and crucial topic indeed. I welcome your proposals that have been put forward in this regard. And of course, this also holds true for the major challenge of our times, answering the question how we can stop and mitigate man-made climate change. We have to succeed by mid-century, and it requires great efforts, where exactly, especially those states that meet in the G7 formats, but other countries as well, because the citizens in many countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America will not accept that they do not enjoy and reach the same amount of prosperity that we're seeing here and in the other G7 nations. They want to benefit from the opportunities that technological process holds that we've seen in the past 100, 200 years. But it has to be our common task that we will succeed without harming the climate, without destructing our environment. We need greatest efforts, especially by those who have progressed industrially. We can develop the technologies that are necessary so others can benefit from that as well. Technologies that can be just as cheap as compared to the use of fossil fuels, but also technologies that lend to a contribution to protecting the climate. This is why we have a proposal as to how we can organize this cooperation. The Climate Club, we want it to be an open climate club. It shouldn't be a closed climate club. It shouldn't only be accessible to countries in the north, but it should also be accessible for the countries of the south. We want everyone to cooperate, but if we embark on this path towards protecting the climate, then we must prevent that we isolate ourselves and do not cooperate anymore. We need to go hand in hand. We need to cooperate with other nations. And this is essentially behind the idea of this climate club, which should make sure that we cooperate and not work against each other. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your work, your commitment, your interest. This forms a foundation, the basis, so that we can achieve progress in this world. And in times like these, we have to say that I count on you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chancellor, for those impressive words, and which I think are proving that you really dived into the topics of all the people present here in the room that they have raised and that they have mentioned and that they have highlighted during the past few months. Now I would like to thank the press for being here for this part of the session, and also for our viewers in the live stream. We are now closing the main part of this session, and are therefore thanking you very much, and we'll take a very short break, waiting to continue our closed session. Thank you very much.